I'm Ryan,
And I'm Jess.
and this is Esoteric Nonsense. Today, we're talking about a specific subject. We're going to try to keep it on topic a little bit.
We're definitely going off topic.
No, we're
going off topic because of my view on this topic.
We're professionals.
I have become obsessed with the story of the Blood Countess. Are you familiar with the Blood Countess?
No.
Elizabeth Bathory. Okay, do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, just dive in. Tell me what the story is.
So I'm going to tell you the historical story, and then I'm going to tell you kind of my viewpoint on it, which I'm not the only one who doesn't think that everything matches up. I mean, there's been a plethora of people who have really taken this to a different level.
Okay.
So Elizabeth Bathory was a Hungarian countess. She had kind of I don't know that it was unusual for the time, her upbringing, but she was from one of the most prominent families in the area at that time. Okay. So she was raised with a very classical upbringing. She was very educated. She spoke numerous languages. She spoke like 6 languages. She spoke Hungarian, obviously, Slavic, Latin, Greek, amongst others.
Okay.
There were a lot.
Countesses had like time for that shit. You know what I mean? Everyone else was picking up potatoes and crap, so that makes sense.
It does make sense. Well, and she knew how to read and write, which at the time was very uncommon. Even her husband at the time, he didn't know very well how to read or write, and he wasn't very well versed in many languages. She was regarded in that time as one of the most educated and intelligent women in the entire world.
Okay.
She was very young when she became engaged. There's a lot of different records of it, right? Anywhere between the ages of 11 and 14.
Okay, like they do back then.
Like they be doing. But it wasn't like she was a child bride to an adult duke.
It was another like young.
Right. And again, the records on her are a little skewed, anywhere between 11 and 14. But the records on him are more pronounced. So between 14 and 15 is when he was engaged to her.
All right. As long as neither one of them was doing it willingly, I think it's okay.
Well, I mean, it seemed to work out in the end.
Yeah.
So when she got engaged, she was engaged to Count Ferenc Nadasti. And I'm not sure if I even pronounced that right. And I could be totally off. There's plenty of other people smarter than me that can tell you.
Whatever.
Right.
Fine.
So it's a couple of years before they get married. He was like 16. She was probably 14. Again, the records are a little skewed. And the Nadasti family, for the wedding gift to her, gave her a castle. Like, these are 2 super prominent families. They're very rich.
Okay, I'm going to be the first derailment. Is this like, here's a castle? Or is this like, we got this empty shithole castle that we need someone to take over and like spruce up and take care of that area? And they like show up to like a fucked up old castle that they have to like, do some remodeling on and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Like, now this is our problem. Or do you think they like built a castle for them?
Oh no, they didn't build a castle. It was part of the family estate.
Yeah, they already had it. Definitely.
Yes, they had a ton of different estates.
Grandma died. Here's her double wide. That's what that was. Happy.
That's fine. Look, if I was getting married and somebody was like, here's a castle, it's not the best one we have, but it's a castle.
It's here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I'll take that castle. I don't need the newest castle.
I guess.
It still stands today. You can actually go there. Yeah. I
awesome.
Absolutely plan to go there. There's no way I'm not going.
Yep. All right. I'll put it on the list.
Right. I haven't planned the trip out yet, but it's definitely coming.
Is this near Transylvania?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of speculation that her whole story was a huge inspiration for the story of Dracula.
All right.
Now, there's no actual proof of that, and there's no actual notes that say, yes, this was kind of based on her, but...
Or at least, like, the setting of Transylvania for that kind of, like, that vibe of that's where the vampires come from, is Transylvania, like...
Well, and there have been accounts from people who have been there both way back in the day and currently that talk about the castle. Like, this is a very dark castle. This could definitely be a vampire's castle type thing.
All right.
Anyhow, I could get hemmed up in the details for hours. Like, I could go through her whole biography. I could go through her husband's whole biography. There's a ton of information out there on it. but I'm not going to focus on that because I have too many other questions.
She's your idol. I get it.
Maybe if some of my suspicions are right, but not in the way that you think.
Okay. All right.
You're welcome. So anyhow, long story short, so her husband, Fernick, he was off fighting the war against the Ottoman Empire most of their marriage.
Okay.
He was a very prominent soldier. He was known himself as the Dark Knight or the Black Knight, depending on how it translates.
Okay.
So he was a beast when it came to being a soldier.
All right.
And so the whole tale is that she, in this castle, just became a villain.
All right.
The counts of how many mostly peasant girls that she killed is between 600 and 650. Historically, that's the count.
I know you're probably going to tell me, but why girls? Why is it only girls? Was there like...
Nope, there's nothing that really relates to why it would just be girls.
Just often bitches. Like...
Yep.
What? For what?
That's some alpha dog behavior right there.
Yeah. Holy crap. She was the inspiration for Snow White. She was standing in front of a mirror getting old and ugly and being like, I'm going to kill every bitch who's younger and prettier than me.
That's funny that you say that, though, because a huge part of the motivation was thought to be that she was bathing in the blood of these young girls.
All right.
To keep herself young and healthy.
See?
I know.
It's crazy.
I know. It's crazy. And when you think about that, there's still a lot of there's practices that go on like that today. There are such things as blood facials. People do blood transfusions with the blood of younger people.
If you get an honest answer out of a lot of people, like there's not a whole lot people wouldn't do to save their, even if it's just their youthful good looks, even if they're still aging, they're still going to live the same amount of years, to look the way they did when they were at whatever age they felt they were their best looking. Like, there's some dark shit people are willing to do for that. You know what I mean? Like, realistically.
You are not wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were to tell the right person that you found the fountain of youth, but it's inside the body of that young kid over there, they'll murder him.
But yeah.
They'll just murder him.
Like, this is worth rolling the dice. I want to be youthful forever. Like,
it's so wrong. I mean, I have questions.
Yeah.
Epstein Island. I'm probably going to I don't know what happens to me if I say that out loud, but
oh no,
they're coming. Who knows? Okay, so that's not even where it stops.
Okay.
So I'll give you the key notes of Elizabeth Bathory's life.
Yeah, let's get to the part where you idolize her and for a good reason.
Wow. Okay, so key notes. When she was a young girl, before she was even engaged, she suffered from epilepsy, or seizures, which at the time was very, very
misunderstood.
It was mysterious, right? Nobody really knew what was happening. It's worth noting that according to the physicians at that time, what you were supposed to do to deal with epilepsy was smear a small amount of blood of a healthy person onto the lips of the person having the seizure. And that healthy blood was supposed to help them recover.
Okay.
Right? So from a young age, like, this is the physician's
She had a link
advice.
there.
Yeah. And then there's all kinds of rumors about when she was young, again, prominent families, servants in the day were viewed as lesser than human. And a lot of punishments were very creative. There's a story that says, and I don't know where this story comes from or who can validate it, but there's a story that says that when she was a young girl, she was seen laughing as a convicted thief was sewn into the body of a dead horse as his punishment.
Okay.
Again, very creative, very creative. I mean, does the punishment fit the crime? I don't know. Maybe he stole a horse. Maybe that's what he was a thief for. I don't know.
I'm only not okay with this if they killed the horse just for this practice. If it was already dead.
Right, poor horse.
Yeah.
Poor horse.
That's messed up. But I get the theatrical, public
display.
Shit works, man,
It's a deterrent for sure.
Not enough of it these days.
Oh my.
Okay, so she's
so,
down to get better by using blood. She's
at
desensitized.
The physician's advice. Yeah,
right.
She's desensitized. She has all these things going on. Again, these are stories that I don't know where the validation comes from, but supposedly they happen.
Sure.
And then for the first 10 years of their marriage, which mind you, they're young, but her husband was off essentially almost full time fighting in the war. So 10 years into their marriage is when he comes home for a short time. I guess kind of on leave. I don't know. You're ex-military. You know how this works. Maybe it was the same back in the 16th and 17th century. Maybe it wasn't.
I'm old, but I'm not. I didn't come home on a horse. You know what I mean?
To a castle that was
to a
gifted to your
castle.
young wife.
Yeah, that shit ass castle that my family gave me.
Either way, so he comes home at this point. They have their first child. I think all in all, they had 5 children. But it's said that at that time, she was pretty sadistic already and she had been murdering servants.
Okay.
But he taught her how to torture.
Oh, all right.
Yep. So apparently this is like a dynamic duo kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like cooking together, you know?
Same. Date night is date night.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
yeah. We're learning. We're enjoying it.
Right? We're a young married couple. We're just doing our thing.
Exactly.
Making babies, killing servants, torture, whatever the case is.
Doing your thing.
Do your thing. You do you, boo.
That's right.
So after he teaches her how to torture, gets her pregnant, whatever, he goes back to war. And then now she takes this on as like a full-time gig. Like, oh, I'm raising babies, torturing servants. Raising babies, torturing servants. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. So it said at that time that she really took to torture. And there's stories, one of the stories of torture, just to give an example, was that for, say, a small mistake, like when a servant would make a mistake sewing or miss a stitch, then Elizabeth would take a sewing needle and stick it through the finger of the servant. Yeah, all kinds of weird things. Crush my soul on that one.
That hurts so
And then
bad.
she would tell the servant, if it hurts, pull it out. Which, I mean, I don't know, because then the account says that like servants would take that as permission to pull it out, which if you're dealing with this kind of person and these stories are at all real, no, I'm going to leave that in there because I feel like that's probably better than what's coming.
Chances are there's no right answer. Like leave it in. It's like, oh, you can take that. Let me do more. Take it out. And they're like, no, bitch, you were supposed to leave it in. And they do it again. Like there's no right answer.
Well,
like,
yeah, it's that proverb, right, of the instructor speaking to a student and says, go look at this stick. And if you tell me there is no stick, I'll beat you with it. And if you tell me there is a stick, I'll beat you twice.
Right, yeah.
You know, like
it doesn't matter.
There's just no right answer. Yeah. There's just no right answer. So anyhow, that was a horribly told proverb. Sorry about that.
I get it.
Anyhow, so what the accounts were was that if the servant did pull the needle out, then she would stab them repeatedly.
Right, yeah.
With a knife. So
I don't know. I don't know why I'm acting like that makes sense, but it's like, okay, yep.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I mean,
all right. So she's torturing. Is it only servants at this time?
At this time, it's only servants, only peasants, only servants.
Okay.
People that are just not missed by society. Nobody cares about them, right?
I mean, you bought them.
Right. And in that time, like literally nobody cared. Yeah. They were like, oh, they're not even people. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, and all the accounts say that she was burying them on the property, in a cemetery on the property, which it's a castle. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know how much land she got with castle. It never said.
I'm assuming a lot.
So she's burying them out in the cemetery. At this point, she has like torture chambers within the house, all of these different things. All these women are going missing. Nobody cares.
Right.
So this goes on for years. And then in 1604, her husband passes away from an unknown illness.
Okay.
What they do know is about a year before that, he had contracted some sort of illness where he was paraplegic. He lost the use of his legs.
Okay.
And then they don't really know what the illness was, but he did pass away in 1604.
Okay.
The same year that her husband dies, these rumors start to surface about what's going on in this house, that she's just like killing all of these people. Right after her husband died, she actually started more or less of a finishing school for more prominent women.
Okay.
And it said that that's where these rumors started to surface, was because no longer was it peasant girls that were just disappearing and nobody cared. Prominent families were sending their daughters to this finishing school to learn from Elizabeth. They weren't coming back.
All right. Okay, that's what I was just going to ask you. Like, was there any account of anyone being like what was the story that she told people about where these people went? Like, they don't want to be there anymore. They're still studying. Like, they actually went off with somebody and they're living some life somewhere else. Like, did she bother? I mean, I know you're like, when you're friggin' the royalty or whatever, you don't always have to explain yourself a whole lot, you know, but I just wondered if there was any like attempt to make people like, oh no, this is fine. They're off doing something else. You know what I mean?
There's really no account of that. There's no account of like, where were these people going or any real suspicion at all.
Okay.
There's some different accounts. Like it says there was one account of when there was a clergyman there around the time that her husband died. So I'm assuming maybe last rites.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an account that says that this clergyman pulled her aside and said, because you could see the blood everywhere and the things going on here, screaming in there supposedly. And so he had pulled her aside and said, essentially, God would be mad at me if I didn't at least address with you what you're doing.
Right. Okay.
And the account is that she was upset that he would even accuse her of anything and left him to deal with one of her servants, essentially show him out.
Right.
Now, I will say there is an account during this time, just as a keynote, that there was a woman named Anna that was living with her that people thought to be a witch and also kind of a mentor to her in taking these lives and performing these rituals or whatever they were doing in there.
Her own like Rasputin or Merlin, like her own like
her mystic, own, yeah.
All right.
Her own guide, right?
Yeah.
To atrocity. I don't really know. But that is a chunk of time that this woman was living there.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of conspiracies around, and this was a time when her husband was off at war. So
okay,
we don't know. But she did pass away, and there is record of her passing away at some point, kind of years before all these suspicions arose.
Okay.
And she passed away from supposedly either a seizure or a stroke.
Okay.
At some point.
I wonder, yeah, and that's one of those things too, right? Like the other girl, like Elizabeth, she's still royalty. She's still an important person. So you can never, like, you always wonder, like, okay, this person died and then this person goes off the rails. Was that a scapegoating of just like our poor, like, it wasn't her. This isn't like normal for our family. She had this bad influence of this other person that was probably the reason that she even started doing any of this. And
no, because nobody used her, like this woman, as a scapegoat as to she started because of her or any of that. They essentially just said this was a cohort. This was somebody who was joining in the activities.
Okay. Yeah, not a cause for it, but someone that was a
participant.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, and there's actually more participants coming up in the notes here.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
When these suspicions start to arise, and now we have big families that are getting involved and saying, I think something's going on here, then the king of Hungary at the time, who is Matthias, he went to his right-hand man and said, I need for you to look into this. Well, his right-hand man just so happens to be the cousin of her late husband.
Okay.
So he's part of this family.
All
and
right.
It makes him uneasy, but he's bound by duty. And it sounds like he's a very dutiful guy, and that's all right. No problem. He says, okay, I'll look into it. So he looks into it. He starts questioning people. He starts talking to people about it. And the servants are like, oh, yeah, no, this place is just nuts. This is a madhouse, man. You don't want to come in here.
Okay.
And so he's starting to gather information from the community, from the servants that she has, from different people. And he's just like, his mind has to be blown at this time.
Right.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
What is happening?
He just went to check on something that was like, okay, there's some rumors, but let me just go talk to her, see what the deal is. And it's like, no, it's worse than you thought. Like,
so he essentially finds these 4 servants that are her confidants, that they're helping her to carry out these atrocities.
Okay, so she got some on her side.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And so he tells them, like, you guys are going to have to testify. Can you imagine how scary this would be, being one of these servants? Like, here you have the right hand of the king being like, here's what I need you to say in court. And meanwhile, also, here's this crazy, murderous, torture-driven bitch who wants to bathe in your blood and is like, I don't know that that's a good idea.
Yeah, like, I'm
like, you guys have been safe this far.
Like, I'm leaving with you right now if this is the case. Like, you don't get to leave my side until this bitch is dead.
Right, I need is witness protection a thing in this time? Like, we need to do that. You sew me into the body of a horse until the trial.
She tells us about it all the time.
All the time. She's like really obsessed with this. So yeah, she's got these 4 servants. The husband's cousin essentially comes to her and says, look, this is not looking good for you. Okay, I need for you to confess. And if you confess, instead of torturing you to death, essentially, I'll make sure you don't have a trial.
Okay.
Okay, we're suspected of 600 to 650 brutal torture murders. But tell me nothing has changed in politics, right? Like, nothing will happen to you. We'll just take it out on the servants.
Yeah. We'll figure this out. Like, you're like you're too important to be like actually held accountable. You're just, that's actually like, it's an old like Eddie Izzard joke. It's like, he's like, you kill like a certain amount of people. It's kind of like, it's like, holy shit, like that's crazy, you murderous fuckhead. But then you kill like hundreds and you're just like, I mean, like you get up real early though, huh? Like that's a lot of people to kill. Like it's like that's, it was kind of impressive. Like we'll just put you in a house and don't let anyone go in that house. Like we'll just, but you can live because you're an impressive human being. You really take your craft seriously.
Oh my God, if he knew how right he was.
I know. It's ridiculous. But they but so the servants are supposed to be on her, or like they're supposed to be testifying against her, but who told her how to, like what they were gonna do? Who was the person telling her, like giving her like the plea bargain?
The husband's cousin, so the right hand of the
Okay,
king.
the guy who came to us. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Here's how right Eddie Izzard is. Okay. In 1611, when they were all put on trial, the three of the servants, it's on record that they were tortured to death for their role in this.
Okay.
The fourth servant, it's actually not on record what really happened to them.
Okay.
She got house arrest without a trial, and she had to go to the castle that was gifted to her and be on house arrest.
That sucks, man. Can you imagine
like,
never having?
Really, but maybe you don't get servants anymore. Maybe that's part of the deal. Like I don't know.
Can't even. How? You're not allowed to leave. They got to bring everything to you. You definitely have servants.
I guess actually, yeah. So you still would get servants.
I mean, unless it was like.
It's just like mind blowing. Like,
yeah, unless it's like a Tower of London situation where like you're in a castle, but it's been turned into like your prison, and it's like the only people that are there are like prison guards, and they like keep you in one room and feed you like you're in a cell. Like if that's the case, which very well could have been, they could have just been like, "This is where you stay." They talk about her having
visitors, different visitors who saw her, and like that she was declining, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Because she did pass away not too terribly long after that, because it was December. No, that's not true. It was August 20th of 1614 that she passed away.
Okay. So how many? She was only in there for a few years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Essentially from 1611, 1612, whenever the trial ended, to 1614.
Oh, okay.
So just a couple more years.
Well, they took away her lifeblood, that
exactly,
children's
right?
blood wasn't keeping her alive anymore, so it didn't last long.
Well, there's a whole thing about when she was found to be passed away that they did find one slain servant and one who maybe had undergone some torture.
Okay.
So I guess, yeah, she did still have servants and she's still doing her thing, I guess.
Awesome.
Right? It's a crazy story. Like I said, I become quite obsessed with it. Those are just the key notes. There are so many details in there that get crazy. Yeah. But I have my questions.
Right.
And I think I know I'm not the only one.
Right.
Are we serious right now? Is this what happened? She just killed 650 people and they were like, it's no big deal, until a finishing girl or a couple of girls from the finishing school went.
Right. So all the stories about what happened didn't happen until after she was accused and everything else. So the fact that we don't know anything about it does say there's rumors of something, but for the most part, there's not a lot going on that says she's doing this until it's all over. Right. And then it's like, oh, she's doing this, or it's like half truths and the numbers are way inflated or something. Like, who knows?
And the court records do support the servants testifying, these things that we're reading about. However, I do have to say this: those servants, before they testified, in custody, underwent torture.
Well, yeah.
Right, to get the quote unquote truth out of them.
Right. That's, yeah.
Now, here's the part that I'm going to add that isn't in every story that you read, but is certainly in the historical record if you look hard enough. So, again, we're talking about very, very prominent family ties here. Matthias, the king, owed a huge debt to Bathory and her estate, which would go solely to her now because her husband had passed and that left this estate in her holding.
Okay.
That disappeared upon her conviction.
Right. Once she was convicted, there was no hold over that anymore. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Follow the money, right?
Always follow the money. You know how I feel about conspiracy theories. Let's follow the money.
And I wish I didn't plan this, so I didn't look it up. But that's something that it's so obvious that things were forged and like history is fucked with and people did stuff like that and they could just slander someone to the point where a perfectly good person.
This is a pretty good slander story.
Yeah, this seems like she probably had a little bit of evidence to go on, and then they like went with it.
Other thoughts on that, but go ahead, finish your thought, and then
all
I
I
want
was
to
gonna
tell you
say
what I
is
think.
it always brings me back to like there was this show where they were tracking back the royal family of England, right? They were tracking it from where it is now and trying to figure out like who the actual king or queen of England should be right now based on like just from family descendants, right? Because it's been fucked with and like there's been things that weren't supposed to happen that happened and whatever, right? Well, not only did they find out that it was some dude in Australia that just owned like a sheep farm or whatever, like that he would technically have right to being the king of England, but they also found when they were going through all the records that like there was paper that was dated a certain date and said that like this person was birthed to this person or was born, even like changed like a birth date or whatever it was that they were looking for that would prove the next person in line or why it changed from what it should be. The paper itself, they're able to carbon date now and just look at the type of paper, and it was like 100 years newer than what the date was on the document. So like even in the freaking 1500s, there's somebody out there just being like, just make a fucking scroll that says it's from them. We all did it in high school, burn the edges, make it look like an old piece of paper or whatever, like fuck it up a little bit, and then bring it out and be like, oh, here it is, we found evidence. And then like no one, what are you going to do? There's no way to disprove that back then. It's just, yep, that's it. And
well,
now we know
nature
it's
hasn't changed any, right? Power and money is what people like.
It's always about
and
that.
And they're willing to lie to get it.
Yeah. Well, and I like that story more now because it's very much like it could also be completely fabricated. Yeah. It's fine.
Absolutely it could.
Yeah. So like, okay, that makes an interesting twist, especially with the debt. It'd be one thing if he was just trying to get her land and she was kind of like a woman without a royal connection once her husband died, but she's like.
But keep in mind, this is a wildly intelligent, highly educated woman.
Right.
So she's even if you were to try to threaten her in some way or twist the law or whatever, there's a really high chance that she is way smarter than the king.
Yeah.
So manipulation with her, that wouldn't be the right means to the end. It would have to take something that's this out of control that would just send everybody into like a panic. Oh
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost, I guess it doesn't matter because I was going to say she would almost have to already be like somewhat not liked for people to like go along with that, but they didn't have to fucking go along with anything.
If you're going to torture people to say you need to testify against this person,
yeah.
Here's the thing. In my mind, if it were true and they were saying, we're going to get you out of there and there's no chance they can ever hurt you again, but you do have to testify so we can make sure that can never happen. You don't have to torture me.
Right.
I will tell you the truth. I will tell you everything. Please don't let me go back there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It is wild there and I don't really like it.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll tell you everything. I don't give a shit.
Right. Know? If you can tell me that person can't get out again, like, yep, I'm 100% for it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's.
So the fact that, and again, that is part of the court record. It's not even something that's speculated that these servants had to, or that they did undergo torture by the parliament before they took the stand. That's part of the court record.
Right.
So it's not even a speculation like, oh, maybe they were coaxed into a confession. Like, no.
Nope.
Even the parliament was like, yeah, we cut them up. We cut them up good. We stabbed them so deep. They wish we hadn't stabbed them so deep.
Stab you till you die, and I stab you again.
I kill you dead. I kill you dead. Only I'm not going to let you die because there's things far worse than death.
Yeah.
Just wild. However, like I said, I have some theories about this. And here's another thing, because like I always go back to ancient, you know this about me. I go back to ancient cultures where they say things happen. And always my question is, show me the bodies. Show me the bodies. You show me where this happened. Show me the bodies.
Right.
They did dig up her courtyard.
Okay.
This cemetery that she had. They did find approximately, now the records here are really skewed too. The count is anywhere from 35 to 60 bodies.
Okay. All right.
35 to 60.
Still a lot less than 650. But I feel like once you get into that 50 range, you start looking for other methods of disposal. Because, like, I don't know about you, if I've dug a grave 50 times, I'm starting to be like,
She's
hey,
not digging a
that's true.
grave
She's not.
50 times. She
Either
has
way,
servants.
though,
And I
I
mean,
feel like
this isn't a
that's
day where you to grow your own food. So fertilizer is fertilizer. You do what you do.
all right. Well, and when you say they dug it up, like how recently?
No, I mean at the time of the trial.
At the time of the
They
trial,
dug it up.
okay.
And they were
like,
saying that there were a lot of really shallow graves.
Okay.
Which I mean, what's your motivation as a servant? You're already digging the hole for the
Yeah,
body. You're like,
about
I'm
6
next
feet.
anyway. I'm not going to waste my time with this. Doesn't matter. What am I going to do? Get tortured?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Like
dead
that's
anyway.
coming. That's coming. But I also have to wonder, like, if I'm outside and I know there's a torture chamber in there, and they sent me outside to dig the hole, do I go back inside?
No shit, right?
Because
if I can see freedom, I'm running.
I don't do that.
Mm-mm.
No, I don't go inside. But
yeah, I'll figure something out.
So that was one of like the accounts. Like, well, some of them were shallow graves, so maybe some of the bodies were dragged off by hungry dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, yeah, could make sense. How many hungry dogs are there that they dug up 550, 600 bodies?
Right. Yeah.
And also, how did she not have an army of dogs at this point then? How did anybody get in the castle? I don't know.
And what was the dates that she was operating?
The dates that she was operating?
Yeah. Like, or how long approximately?
So the operational dates of the torture murder business would have been from 1590 to 1610. So it would have been 20 years. I can't do the math on that, but like how many hours a day do you have to torture and kill to kill 650 people?
Yeah, that's basically taking weekends off. Taking one day a week off and killing one person every other day of the week. That's basically what that comes out to.
Yeah, that's a lot. That feels like a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, some people are.
But if it's your business.
Maybe it's how she works out. I don't know. Like this is like, hey, I work out in the morning. I do 2-3 hours of torture. Yeah. Followed by a recovery drink. Good breakfast. And
it's not a daily routine.
Keeps me nice and fit.
You can have like a few going at once. You know what I mean? Maybe maybe you have a Christmas special where you just do a whole bunch at once. Really get into it, you know?
I mean,
so it's not like doesn't have to be a daily routine. I don't know that I would plan it
for a Christmas special, but I feel like that's more of like maybe a Halloween thing or birthday. Could be like a birthday thing. Yeah. Like, happy birthday to me, extra bloodbath.
That's true. You'd be okay with that on Christmas too, though. Don't be.
But that's not my birthday. That's somebody else's birthday, and it just feels really selfish.
Ah, fair. Okay, I got you.
Right? That's not right. That's wrong. That's wrong.
We can agree on that.
Yeah, and wrong. Easter has to be taken off because that's somebody else's. Like that was their big day.
The biggest day.
Yeah, that was a big day. So. Yeah. I mean, those two are definitely paid holidays.
I see. Okay, yeah, because murder is your business, not your pastime. Okay.
I mean, just because you enjoy the job doesn't mean it's not still a job, right?
I get it. Okay, that's fair.
So, with that being said, I think she took on a real heavy toll here when it came to murder.
Wait a minute, you're talking about how all the murder affected her?
No. Here's my question. Okay.
This is where we start the victim blame.
What did these servants do to deserve their fate? I mean,
it ain't nothing. I can tell you that.
this is a lot of people, and there's been some speculation, of course, right, as to is this really what happened? Again, there's kind of some things surrounding it that don't quite add up.
Yeah,
there's a theory out there that essentially the peasant women that she had that went missing, quote unquote, she didn't kill them. She train them to be proper women and then move them out of a war-torn area and into a place where they could have a better life.
Okay, that's like her side of the story kind of account?
Oh, no, not at all.
Oh, okay.
She never told her story. She never went to trial, right? And that was supposedly the plea deal.
Right.
Was that she would never be put on trial and she would just go into house arrest, which to me sounds like Guantanamo Bay. I don't know. I can't imagine that they were like, oh, just to save your dignity, we're going to accuse you of killing 650 people brutally by torture and tell everybody that you bathed in their blood, which even by the court records, by the way, there was no evidence that she ever bled anybody out or bathed in their blood.
Yeah.
And all of the descriptions that anybody who had been in the house that were witnesses had given, and I'm not just talking peasants, I mean like the corporals that had gone through and people like that, described these torture chambers as just covered in blood everywhere. What a scene. Yeah. So crazy. Completely out of control.
She's basically the devil. Yeah.
Right. So the whole thing about bathing in the blood, like, but they said all the blood was in the torture chamber, on the floor and the walls and all this.
Just conflicting, like, answers of what was actually going on.
Right. None
They
of the
needed it to be crazy.
forensic files wasn't a thing back then. So
Yeah, so you don't know.
yeah, you don't know. Yeah, could you imagine how bad it would have stunk in there if these guys were telling the truth?
Just rotten blood everywhere.
Decaying blood everywhere.
I mean, to be fair, they weren't all that concerned about bad smells back in the day. You know what I mean? Talking about 1600s, like they also like butchered meat and had entrails just like in the open sewers on the streets in London. You know what I mean? Like the whole
things that make you go
yeah, like people that used to like high heels came from not getting your feet in the shit on the streets.
That's not a joke.
Yeah, and there's people that used to,
which is why I still wear them in a lot of rooms. Like I'm not trying to step in that shit.
Yeah, me too.
I know. Plus they just make your butt look so good.
I can't do. I mean, you're not doing that on your own. You know, can't do it.
No, it takes the height.
But yeah, I mean, so there's like enough. There's enough speculation to make you think maybe like people got away with crazy shit.
Here's where my mind goes and why I'm just like obsessed. And there's so many different details depending on which account or biography or any of it that you read. We have a highly, highly educated, highly intelligent woman here. Beautiful woman. If you ever go and look at like any of the paintings or there's not photographs, but any of the sketches or anything of her, she was a beautiful woman who as a child suffered from quote unquote fainting spells is what they called them, but epilepsy that we know now, right?
Yeah.
She's lost friends to whether it was illness or a sudden tragedy, you know, of the medical effect. Being a doctor back then was kind of a toss of the hat anyway. We didn't really even study human anatomy very much at that point.
Yeah, they were still kind of just figuring it out. They were just like, man, keep them comfortable. You know,
and that was certainly not a place for women.
Right.
So out of all of these girls that she was taking in, was she taking in sick girls?
Maybe.
Right? What would have happened to a lower class girl that had epilepsy?
Right. Nothing. They would have just let it take her. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have done anything. Or they would have said they were possessed and
killed them.
Yeah. Like it would have been like a real problem and like very much so. So yeah, I mean,
and that's something that you can relate to, right? Like I suffer from TIAs, which makes me ultra sensitive to other people who have those kinds of issues because it's terrifying. It's terrifying, and there is no answer right now. That's a lot the same. There is no answer. Nobody knows why it happens. There's no
right.
So when you think about it, just a what if, right? Here's where that just taking a different train of thought comes in. If there's 60 bodies in the yard, we're saying that 650-ish peasant women and young prominent women went missing under her rule. It's actually feasible that if she was taking in sick girls that nobody knew how to treat and they were going to either kill them or discard them. Yeah. There is a chance that some of them passed away from their illness.
Yeah, they just died in her custody. But
right.
Not by
so
her
that
hands.
Would explain why there would be a healthy amount of bodies, but not what we're talking about, and the terror of her being this violent murderess.
Yeah.
That would explain some of those bodies being there, right? Like not everything can be cured, and some people do get taken by their illness.
Right.
But what if that's the problem, right? Here you have this woman who's already very highly educated, very, very highly intelligent, already a threat in her day. Also one of the most prominent women in the area. She's very powerful. After her husband, who is the Dark Soldier, passes away the same year. Right. Is when all of these rumors start to surface.
Yeah.
Right. And now they're saying, well, it's because these women went there for finishing school. No, because it's not, especially in that day, it wasn't less embarrassing to have a child that had a neurological or mental disorder in a prominent family, which it was actually more likely due to inbreeding to keep bloodlines pure.
Yeah, that's true.
Than it was for peasant girls. These could have very easily also been young women that their families found out, like Elizabeth cares for these types of people and she tries to look for answers.
Take them, yeah.
So they'll be safe in her castle where nobody can see them.
Right.
And then if anything happens or anybody asks where her daughter is, like, we'll just say she killed her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. They went up there and never came back. Especially if there's like it's so crazy to think back then because word of mouth was the only way anything spread. But like they were almost like better at it. Like shit would find its way across a huge amount of area in no time, like within a few days where like, yeah, nowadays it's instant, but like, it's almost too big now. So like local stuff that happens like right here in our hometown, I don't know shit about it. I don't ever hear about it because all I ever get for news is like world news. So like local shit that's happening, rumors like that back then, I feel like were way more like spread like wildfire. So once that's out there and you don't want to admit that you gave up your kid or that your kid had an issue and you gave her the like rights to her to take care of them, whatever, for some reason you don't want to admit that, and now they're giving you a convenient thing where they're just like, we think this lady's crazy and she's killing kids. And you're just like, well, I sent my daughter there. She never came back, like, fuck this broad, like, so you just don't know. That's the biggest thing, is you have no idea. And in that situation, just to make this, bring it back to the first episode for a second. But that's where someone like me who like used to feel like they needed to like shit on religion somehow would say that's where only relying on religious belief can be dangerous, because people back then didn't have an answer for epilepsy and they didn't know what it was. So they blamed it on being possessed. So like they just used something they were ignorant with and inserted the mystic,
insert devil here,
devil here, and this is why we get rid of it, and like it's totally justified for us to get rid of this human being. Now that's like it's a really harsh way of saying it, but like that's how they, if they didn't have the means to take care of them, if that was something you couldn't do, if it was too much of a burden to where other people are going to starve, I actually understand why that would have become a thing back then, and why like unintentional things turn out to be better for the species to move forward, right? At a very basic level. But we know now that like this isn't something this person is going to have to deal with constantly. Like there are ways around this. There are things that trigger it. But they didn't even, until they got over the idea that this could only be spiritual, like some kind of possession, they were never going to figure that out.
And by this time, they had moved past kind of the spiritual thing. Because like I said, they called it the fainting illness. They thought people were fainting and something was happening to them.
Yeah.
And it is different when you're from a family like Elizabeth's and you have a physician on call and they even unorthodox cures, like they're rubbing blood on your lips. But you're protected. You're going to get put into bed. People are going to serve you until you get better. These things are going to happen.
Right.
If you're a peasant family and you have a child that's born with Down syndrome per se,
right,
you want to be able to keep them with the family.
Right.
But you also know that to a degree, they can't get caught with the family because the guards or whoever's demanding taxes or whatever it might be, children to go to the military, whatever, they're not going to take kindly to that.
Right.
The community is not going to take kindly to that. They're going to abuse your child.
Right.
Your child is going to grow up in danger. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
So if it's me and this prominent countess says, I don't want to make a big thing of it. And I don't want to tell the community because essentially this is something that would be severely frowned upon, and let men find out I'm practicing medicine, because that would be death in itself.
Right.
They would absolutely find a way to execute me. But allow me to take this child because I can keep it safe and I have the resources to keep her safe. That would be a godsend. You would see that as nothing but good faith in a person. And again, if this were a thing, and I've said this about other tragedies before too, but where are the 600 families? Why were there not 600 families of young women who knew that their daughter took a job at this castle as a servant, show up to the trial and say, absolutely, you know what? Mine went missing too. Do the peasant families, quote unquote, care less about their own children than prominent families? Because it sounds like they could just dismiss it. Like nobody cared about peasants, even their own families didn't care about it.
Which I doubt. They just didn't have any rights they didn't have a voice, would be my guess, is that even if they
certainly didn't have a voice.
Even if there were 600 families, 650, whatever, of peasant girls that went missing, and it was definitely, they knew where they were last. They went up to that castle and never came back. And like, we all know this, they would have to get somebody of prominence on their side to push the case forward.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
but that's not the part that I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about at the time that people are now on trial, which you know how public trials were back then.
Oh,
we have 4 servants that were on public trial.
Yeah.
Well, 3 confirmed, and then the 4th one, we actually don't know what happened to them. But so we have 3 that are on public trial for this. There would be even say half of the families of people who the last known place that their person was at the castle. If that's your son, would you show up to that trial? Would you want to see who these monsters
Oh
are?
yeah, of course.
So where were all those people?
That's what, and I don't know.
Again, when I say show me the bodies, I don't just mean the dead ones.
Right.
Show me the live bodies. Where are they at?
And the problem is, it's so long ago, we just don't know. We don't know if it's just not
I
recorded.
Know,
we don't know.
That's why we're talking about it.
No, I know. It's frustrating though that like you say like, oh, we should look into that, but like there may just not be any record of something. You know, like
there could be. That could be the case. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that this leads to some mind expansion for me, because if I start to think about all the details, it doesn't necessarily add up. And I'm not saying that this was something in particular, but what I am saying is here's the facts. Elizabeth was 54 years old when she died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she got married young. She lived a young life, right? So she got married young. She's 54 years old when she died. She lived in this castle after she had lived with her husband's family for a couple of years up until the wedding, because she learned from his mom how to manage the estates and how to manage this kingdom and these types of things. Husband is off at war for most of it. Oh, and mind you, just remember this, while she's killing 650 people, torturing them to death, she's raising 5 children.
I was just going to ask you if she had any kids.
She's raising 5 children while her husband's off at war.
Okay.
So essentially a single mom, 5 kids, also torture, murder, kill.
Yeah.
Could be done.
Could be done.
Again,
lots
in
of servants.
This kind of family, it doesn't necessarily mean she's raising the kids, right? There's au pairs, of course. So you have all of these details, though, that I'm not necessarily outright disputing. I'm just saying, like, the reason I'm obsessed with this is because it doesn't make sense. And my brain likes the puzzles sometimes.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. Make it make sense to me.
Right.
Now, am I saying that it's impossible? No. And if so, is this one of the most prolific serial killer stories of all time? Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And she is credited as being the first female serial killer.
That's nuts, because it's like, yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole too, is like, what's a serial killer? Because like, I know there's a definition and stuff, but when you start throwing in like people that were soldiers and were killing in the midst of a war, but also took a great joy in it and
and used a very real methodology.
Or like did whatever, like, and like their thing, like some of them might have some numbers that would make this look silly, you know,
just because you got paid for it.
Right. But it just
doesn't necessarily
so
make
like,
it untrue.
It's one of those things where like most famous and most prolific are, number one, the only serial killers we know anything about are the ones that we've caught. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like,
and there's undoubtedly,
there's no way that none of them have gotten away with it.
Yeah, there's more numbers that have gotten away with it or are currently getting away with it than ones that have been caught. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's a wild story, and because there is so much at stake when you talk about any of the drama through history of royal families anywhere in the world, it's fascinating. Like, they were Hollywood of their day. Like, we've almost replaced that with Hollywood, because you think all the scenarios that go on in Washington DC are crazy, with all the like the false rumors and real things we find out and whatever else. Like, that's not new. That's been going on forever, and it's about 50-50. 50% of the time you find out someone was a legit psychopath. The other 50% of the time, you find out that everyone involved had a reason to make this person sound like a psychopath so they could get him out of whatever the hell they were in charge of. So it's like,
or to kind of pin it on them. Yeah.
Or pin something directly on them to just like, here, we need a fall guy.
There are so many dark things going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many dark things. And like I said, knowing that there are so many dark things that happen in the world and have happened throughout history, would I be willing to discount this entire story, this entire biography of this woman? No.
Yeah.
No, I would not. Yeah. However, am I willing to just accept it? No. No, I'm not.
No, there's like, that's the problem too, is that there's enough evidence. Like,
there was too much to win.
Right.
For other people. I mean, think about this. This not just dethroned her.
Right.
Essentially, from all of the estates and property and money and everything else that she owned, and gave it to the person who accused and convicted her.
Right.
But it dethroned her family completely.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I didn't know that. I thought she was like the matriarch of the family. Like, she was.
But this is why her sons and daughters, they didn't come into the same power.
Well, and I didn't. Yeah, like, was there any story about them at all?
Not really. I mean, after that,
they just kind of.
They still married into other prominent families. All of her kids really did.
Okay. Yeah.
But that level was never obtained again.
Right. They did away with a whole bloodline, essentially.
And all of that essentially went to the king, right? Which is the person who said, hey, go find dirt on her. Go find this.
Yeah.
And there was some serious motivation there.
Yeah, well, and when your husband was the Dark Knight or whatever, the
And
Dark
right
King,
after he dies, all this
you
happens.
don't get that reputation and have no enemies. Like,
Oh no,
you know what I
no,
mean?
no.
Like, there's definitely people that were like, he's dead. I've got a vengeance against that motherfucker. We're going to take care of some.
When I have a lot of questions about like an unknown illness that paralyzed him and then killed him within a year.
Yeah, who
Now,
knows?
again, in that time, there were many, many, many medical mysteries that some remain medical mysteries to this day, but there was certainly a lot unknown then.
Yeah.
So it could have been
Yeah,
any number of things. It could have been any sort of neurological disorder or anything that could have made this happen.
Right.
Yeah, but that being said, I mean, that's kind of a weird fact to throw in there too. Like,
Yeah.
the same year that he passes away, all of this kind of comes to call, and who's investigating it but his cousin?
Right.
Who, again, back in that day, am I saying there was upset that everything was now hers and not the cousin's?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. And
Yeah,
it doesn't say one way or the other.
Right. It says that he was sent to go investigate, but
right, and
is
that he was
inferred?
The right hand of the king.
Right. Is that just inferred, or did he be like, hey, I need to go take care of this. I'm going to go look into some shit real quick. And then all of a sudden report back like, man, I got there and this is nuts. What's happening? Just, you know, like just like completely shit all over. Or maybe he like, did he go there to like make an alliance with her and be like, hey, like, here's the thing. You're not keeping control of all this shit. Like, we need to come up with something. And she was just like, fuck you. I ain't doing anything. He was like, cool story. Let me spin a tail while I ride this fucking fancy donkey back to the freaking kingdom. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's all right. And it is on record that the king had sent him under suspicion, and also all of a sudden the king cares. I know they said that there were some more prominent women who went to this finishing school that started disappearing, but that finishing school wasn't but for, I mean, if we're to follow the timelines, 1 to 2 years maybe. But again, if this is a person who can murderously rampage enough that in 20 years has killed 650 people, 2 years is plenty of time to make a lot of people disappear and be like, I don't know.
Well,
but again, you have the person who is credited with being the most intelligent woman alive in the world
at that time.
And one day she gets bored and is like, you know what? I'm going to start killing the rich girls 20 years into this.
And that's the crazy part, is that's what we always, those are the serial killers that everyone talks about, is ones that they almost want them to be like super smart individuals, right? Like, it's not that common. I don't remember if it was the Green River Killer or which one it was, but whatever the dude's name was, he was a pig farmer. And no offense to pig farmers, but from everything they said about the dude, not bright. But the fantasy.
Pig farmer had to come into that. There's plenty of.
I'm not disparaging pig farmers. I'm saying he wasn't royalty. He wasn't freaking he had a blue collar job. You know what I mean?
Right. It wasn't like.
I'm not saying all pig farmers are killers or dumb or anything. I'm just saying he had an average.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see what the pig farmers think about this.
Oh no, the union's coming for me. But
is there a pig farmers union?
There has to be. There's got to be. But that's even more part of the story to me, is that she was this super intelligent, maniacal person who just liked to torture people. That's like Hannibal Lecter, all these movies, everything. We're fascinated with not just a serial killer, but someone who's really good and charming at the same time. It's like the Ted Bundys of the world, you know? But even him, if you didn't know it at the time, you might think he's a weird guy, but relatively charming. Knowing what you know, you realize he couldn't keep the freak down all the time. Even videos they have of him talking and representing himself in court and stuff, it was clear that he was a fucking creep. He was just such a
charismatic.
That's
how he's described.
Right,
often,
yeah.
Right, a very charismatic guy.
Right, that's why he was into politics and stuff. And but even then,
I mean, that should have been their first clue. Into politics, yeah. probably a serial killer.
Definitely okay with it at best.
Right. I mean, think how many people have kept some secrets that have come out lately.
Yeah,
they're into it.
They're out there. We're pretty just okay with that as a society. But they, as long as you're rich enough and you kill people, we're we knew you were gonna, or it's whatever, it's fine. But yeah, so that's even more of the story, that I guess it doesn't really make me think one way or the other as far as how true it is or how much it's not. It's just interesting to me how much the serial killer that's also super intelligent go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like, and intelligent is whatever you make of it. I guess if you're getting away with it for a long time, you're intelligent in the art of killing and disposing of people, but maybe not anything else. Maybe that's just your one gift, you know?
Yes.
But it's it lends more to the fact that it's a fantastic story to me than it does that it was definitely 100% true of what happened. And I'm very much a follow the money kind of person. Like, who's profiting from this first, and then I'll come up with what I think is going on based on that.
Well, and of course it was the king that profited from the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matthias was the one that profited. And I should kind of release this little detail that I only held it captive because it completely escaped me while we were talking about it. But not only did his debts to her disappear when she became convicted,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the debt that he owed to her family, because he owed more debt to her family,
Mm-hmm.
he managed to get them to forgive by allowing them to manage her captivity under the house arrest.
Oh, so he even got a deal out of it. Because if he killed her, the debt wasn't necessarily gone. He had to work that into the deal and like have the leverage.
Right, because it would have fallen to her family,
Right.
right?
He would have needed something. And they were a family that he owed money to, but obviously didn't have more power than him, or else they would have disputed it, or, you know what I mean? Whatever the case is. Someone had a bigger army, you know, and I'm guessing it's the one that
Yeah,
won
it's
the
probably the
negotiation.
king that has the army. I mean, she had under her own roof, right? Like his most brutal soldier.
Right. Yeah.
Which, where do you think his alliance would have been?
Right. That would have been
to his wife,
to
probably.
His wife, yeah.
I mean, he passed away young. He was 48 when he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she passed away young too. She passed away at 54. But think about that. And in a very short lifespan, they were married 29 years.
Right. Yeah. That's a long term.
They literally grew up together.
Yeah. And there was nothing in there saying anything about them having any kind of a bad relationship, like, which
no, the
only
relationship detail that is really in their history in either one of their biographies is that he taught her how to torture and kill. Which, I mean, I've seen Natural Born Killers, right? Like, that must have been their greatest bond then.
I was going to say,
that's a pretty bonded couple if you're torturing and killing together.
I'm not condoning anything, but if they were sharing something that intense, I got a feeling they kind of dug each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were pretty tight.
Yeah, yeah. And she wanted to be involved in his hobbies, and then while he was gone, she kept
what he did for work. She really did. She was very, very involved as a wife.
It'd be no different than if somebody, like, if you were to start watching football, and then while I was away, you were like, I'm going to watch football while he's not even here. That way we can talk about it when he gets home, and I know what's going on, and we have something to relate on. Same thing.
You can hope more for the torture. I'm not watching football.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you started watching hockey. That's healthy. We're good there.
I mean, I got UFC. Now I've got hockey.
Right. And UFC I can dig. So actually a huge proponent of UFC, obviously. But
yeah.
Football, fun. No, thank you.
Yeah. Well, you're incorrect, but that's fine.
No. And then no.
Anyway.
So moving on from that, but I do have a lot of these questions. And then that goes into that discovery side of my brain where, okay, so I developed my own unfounded theory about maybe she was taking care of young women who had illnesses because she could relate to them. She had the power to do so. She had the resources to do so. She would have to do so undercover because her practicing medicine in her day they would have burned her as a witch.
Yeah.
That would have actually been the punishment. There's no way she would have been able to practice medicine.
Especially if it was somewhere in the middle where she was kind of like experimenting too to help her own shit.
She kind of would have been too, right? You would have had to have been to be practicing any kind of medicine at that point. Everybody was.
Right. So
everybody still is. We just don't say that anymore. So
definitely would have been doing some weird shit to see if you could figure it out.
Well, in the part that I kind of left out because I don't really know how to explain it and I don't know enough about it, but treating the epilepsy wasn't just about rubbing blood on the lips of the person having a seizure. They also had him drink blood from a skull.
Not the blood that comes from a skull, but out of a skull.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if that's supposed to be a human skull or not. Like I said, I don't have enough background on that, so I didn't really bring it up before now, but there's a weird tidbit that I don't really know anything about.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of it was a big mixture of medicine, ritual, and magic, especially at that time.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Yeah, I mean, there's all
even
the
amongst the most admired physicians.
there's all the ingredients in there for her to be a misunderstood and convenient, target for some slander. And
Although there's also enough evidence in there to say maybe she believed that cure and she thought if she bathed in enough blood, she wouldn't have seizures anymore.
well, and what do we always talk about? The truth always lies somewhere in between. Like,
Yep.
it would be tough for me to believe that there's nothing, at no basis whatsoever at all for the story.
And you would have to think a certain amount of people had to have gone missing
Something.
somewhere around her castle for all of this to come up.
Or maybe like,
and it could be that the numbers are wildly exaggerated. It could be that they're pretty accurate. It could be that people weren't getting upset because they knew why their family members had gone there.
right.
It could be that they did have no voice. There's a million different could be.
Who
Well,
you know, there was.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, I don't want to derail it, but I mean, like, this stuff, these kind of things happened all through history. Like, I don't remember the time frame. I'll look it up. We'll talk about it on a different one. But there was a lady in London that used to just, like, people would sell her their babies for like a small amount of money, and she was like seen as this like angel that came around, and she was like, I have like an orphanage, I have a place for these girls to go, it's in the country, it's out of the city. And these like prostitutes and just people of no means were like at least I'm gonna, like, she's paying me for the baby. Oh no, I take that back. They weren't. They had to pay her to take the baby.
I was going to say I don't really see.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But okay.
Yeah, there was no. She wasn't just sick. It was still about money. But she was like, so yeah, they paid her a certain amount, like not a lot, but whatever they could come up with, I guess, to take the baby. And then like most of the time, she threw it into the Thames on her way back home from leaving their house. Like, she never even took it home. She threw it in a well, threw it in the river, like. And from what they understand, like hundreds and hundreds of babies. Like, she made a good living off of people paying her to take their children and take them somewhere safe, understanding that they're never going to hear from them again. And then she just pocketed the money and chucked the baby in the river, So like, these kind of stories happen throughout history, and that's why it's so, like, it's not hard to believe that someone else was so callous and like just had a thing for often people, because there's just.
It is believable. We are a disturbing species. We really are.
Mm-hmm.
When you get down into the depths of humanity, we are capable of great atrocities. I mean, just unforgivable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what we're capable of is intense, to say the least.
Yeah.
And a lot of us keep it under voluntary control.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. It's repercussions, right? Like, I'm not saying that the world's or whatever, the country I live in's laws are the only reason I don't do things that they tell me not to do. Like, I do have my own moral code, but there are definitely a greater number of people who would do terrible things without the repercussions of going to jail and stuff than there are people who actually do it. Like,
whether it would be laws or the laws of God.
Or the laws of God, whatever it is that the laws that they don't want to break because they don't have an actual moral feeling about the life or anyone else's rights. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't see the problem with stepping on people in whatever way to get a leg up or whatever. Like, that's definitely a personality type. And
it's not just a personality type, I don't think. We are a wildly adaptive species.
Right.
It takes a very short amount of time to convince even some of the highest of moral people it's you or them.
Yeah. And
And there's a shocking change in morals that can come about when it's you or them, and then even worse when it's your own or it's them. Because there's a lot of people that will sacrifice themselves for the greater good.
Yeah.
But they'll draw that line when it comes to sacrificing their own. Their children, their spouse, their mother, their father, their siblings. All of a sudden, the rules of the game change.
Well, and it's a real uncomfortable conversation, right? Like, I was just talking about this with someone earlier today, and it was the people that get indoctrinated, but also people that are just trying to take care of their families, and they find out that what they're involved in is like this wildly heinous thing. But if the threat is it's either you perpetrate these atrocities or your family has them perpetrated on them along with you and your family will be in the concentration camp rather than running it, you still have to answer for that. You still have to pay for that at some point. And that is the decision you're making. But man, it's hard for me to sit here and really judge having my own family and having my tight five, you know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
I will watch everything burn. I'd like to think that I wouldn't set the world on fire to save them. I wouldn't be the one to light the match, but it's me and them and everyone else can get fucked. You know what I mean? Like I don't care. So like that mindset, I feel like that's like such a different mindset than the like just for personal gain. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But I feel like some people have that same feeling about themselves because like I would also sacrifice myself for those same people. I would like if the deal was like I'm not doing this crazy thing and they're like okay well then you are gonna die but like they're not gonna fuck with my family like well so be it. I'm not doing this. I'm not part of this. I'm not gonna answer for this. But when you put that caveat in there like North Korea does, right? Like everyone who defects from North Korea, like their whole fucking family, everyone they can attach to at all is imprisoned and sent away, whatever. Like they're extra fucked, right? That's a difficult thing for me to think that I would actually try to escape with that being the other side of it, even though I know that like for myself this is the right way to do it. I don't think I could.
In North
And
Korea, they understand human nature. That's why that is the punishment.
right, yeah,
And here it's very different. I think your average person takes a lot more into account. There's a lot of powers that be, though, that you're not on the same playing field as them.
right,
So, whereas we're thinking kind of laterally, like, would I do this to that person over there and under what circumstance?
yeah,
If we're far enough below, we don't even count anymore.
right,
So to put the people that you see no bigger than ants below you,
hmm
would you do this to them? Would you,
insert
yeah,
whatever
insert,
whatever atrocity, yeah.
yeah, whatever atrocity it is there? Like
Here's the truth, yeah.
I think the game changes for some people.
hmm
And I think the game changes to not how bad would it have to be, but how little can inconvenience me to the point where I think that this is the right answer.
right, yeah. And it's a hemisphere, right? Like everyone can be real on their own high horse about what they would do and what they wouldn't do, but a lot of it also is out of sight out of mind. And I'll argue this till the end that like based on all the evidence of human history there will always be a subjugated class of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's even required, but it's only required,
Required by who?
well, I don't know, natural law. Like there can't be a society of plenty and a society of extra without a society who has not enough. Like, and
Well, and that's
this
the argument for socialism, right?
it is, but it only that shit's only been tried on like a single country scale,
Well, it's never been successful, even on a single country scale.
and they still subjugate another class to do it
Of course, they will.
directly or indirectly. So
Anybody who sees a chance for power is going to seize the opportunity for power. I say that broadly by saying anybody, but a huge majority of the time, that's human nature.
right, and
You can't even run a company, not
Mhm.
even a smaller company, without that hierarchy.
right
You
because
can't do it. That's not how human nature works.
right, and saying like that, I would my tight five, which is a new word I just came up with, but if those five people are the people that I would defend before everyone else, that doesn't mean that there's like if I can, there's not now 10 or 20 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. Like I would rather have a huge group of people that I can protect and make sure that they go on and have like the best life they can. But the problem with that is the bigger that bubble gets, the more you have to include, and to have them all have the same standard of living, like the higher up class has to give up so much more than anyone even realizes to make it across the board everyone is equal, that they're never going to do that. Like the some of the poorest people in the United States are living better than still another huge group of people. So like until we're all like basically poverty line is like the richest person in the United States, what we would consider the poverty line now, that would be like part way to where we would have to be for everyone to have the equal amount of resources and like life and expectance of finding freedom and joy and whatever else. Like I'm just saying, I'm not saying that is the case, that nothing better could ever happen, but based on the evidence of all human history, there cannot be a higher class without a subjugated class. And that's big
But
world
given
stuff.
reason, there can't be. What would a higher class be a higher class then if there wasn't a subjugated class?
Right, exactly. But then when you shrink that down to a local level, like when it's the royalty that has all the resources and needs a shit ton of resources to live the life that they're living, they're going to protect their small group, and everyone in that community is going to be the subjugated class. Like, all I'm getting at is that it's not out of the realm of reason, because we all do it whether we realize it or not. And even though it's a smaller scale and it's more direct when it's a royal and their subjects, it's the same thing on a global scale. Like, we are like the highest, most profited, or whatever, the wealthiest societies are like the royal family of the world, and they just accept that, yeah, like, shit sucks in other places, but like, what am I going to do about it? And it's the same. I don't think it's that much different. It's just the bigger it gets, the more diluted it gets, and it's more acceptable, I
think it's that the bigger it gets, the more confusing it gets, and the less anybody really understands the game. So,
and what are you going to do?
We don't like things we don't understand. That is human nature.
Right.
We are pack animals.
Right.
So there are going to be leaders, and there are going to be those who are led.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself calls for a society with some subjugation. And again, it doesn't make one better than the other. We have a perception that there's a higher society and a lower society and a middle class, because that's what we've been calling it through social studies. That's what we've been calling it through the study of the social classes.
Yeah.
We learn that in grade school. That's what you learn.
Mm-hmm.
You have upper class, lower class, and middle class. That's even what we call it in this country.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the truth. It's how we picture it, because that's how we were taught it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And realistically, when you look at, I don't even know how we got on this subject, but I'll continue it.
I'm trying to tie it back, but it's not working real well.
When you look at, we have this upper class that people tend to get very distraught with. There are a few people who hold a massive amount of wealth. That wealth came from supplying other classes, if you will, even though I don't know if that's the right way to say it, with what they need for survival. So without that, you wouldn't necessarily have all of the resources that you need. Did it make them a lot of money? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
However, if they didn't have those types of resources, and I'm not saying they should have them all or shouldn't have them all, what I'm saying is those resources that they have are still helping to fund the necessities for the rest of us.
Sure.
If you told me right now, you can't have your house anymore, but you can go stake a claim of land and you can just build a house, and that's how you have to live now. Could I do it? Yeah, I'd have a little log cabin. Would it be the same standard of living as somebody who actually knows how to build a house, put the electricity in, put in indoor plumbing, tie it into a sewer?
Yeah.
Nope. No, it would not be.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have all of those skills, and nor do I have all of the resources. I don't have a big factory that planes boards perfectly.
Right.
I don't have a factory that makes all the screws to hold it together. I don't have a factory that makes the uponor for the plumbing, or makes toilets for the house, or makes the sinks. I don't have these factories.
Right.
I would have to rely on somebody who has the resources and the factories that make those, so that I can purchase them from them. Does that mean they're getting money for what I need? Yes.
Yeah.
So are they gaining monetary status as I'm building my house? Yes.
Yeah.
But that's also what keeps them in business, because then they're going to go reinvest that money to buy more sinks. So then when you build a house, you also have a sink.
Right. Yeah.
Which also, again, increase their monetary value, and then they will buy more sinks. So we look at this as this class of hierarchy, which, again, we took a weird road here.
We did.
And we see it from a monetary standpoint and a resource standpoint. But there is a mental standpoint behind it.
That's what I was getting at.
If there was nobody to support these endeavors to create the things, grow the foods, all the things that we all need to survive, then you would not have them.
Right.
Yes, there are different places in society.
Right. And it's a mindset that's learned based on the class that you've been told you're a part of as well. Yeah. Yeah. No.
And also, though, there is back to what you were talking about. You went through a lot of subjects, and I'm trying to catch up on them all in my head.
I don't know.
But when it comes to protecting and what people are willing to do, yeah, there's wicked people out there. Yes, you do need to know who you would protect and when you would protect them.
Right.
You need to know if you are a protector or not. And if not, then you need to know inside of your own social group what you are.
Right.
Somebody might be better off as a healer than a protector. Some people might be better as a protector than a fixer. Somebody might be better as a fixer than a nurturer.
Right.
You need to know where you belong and make sure that you have the right group to surround you.
Right.
And don't make any mistake that you can find that later. You don't know when the day comes that you need to know who your people are.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Find your people. And yeah, that's, I like that. I like
I'm
that.
a kind person. I'm not a good person.
Right.
So you need to figure out where you fit in.
Right.
And you need to know where the people around you fit in. And you need to know what skills you have and which ones you need to be working on.
Right.
I don't know where that plays into Elizabeth Bathory. I think we just heard, I don't know. I would like to hear other people's opinions on what they think happened here.
Yeah.
That's really where I was going, was I was kind of trying to reach out into the world and find out.
And then I devolved at some point.
I don't know where you were going. I don't really know. We are just, what is today? Is today the 4th?
Yeah. I don't know. 3rd.
Are you sure? Okay, the 3rd. This will probably come out on the 4th, which means that we're like one day from election day. So I think everybody's a little scattered brained. I think there's a ton of election anxiety going on. There's a lot of political anxiety going on. The temperatures are very high. I've heard over the course of this past week some things that I never even would have thought of that people think is going to happen following this election, and some really chaotic situations that people believe are going to happen following this election. Nobody feels safe.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's where your mind went, it's not super shocking really at this point.
You're not wrong. That's
and again, we are animals. We have some animal instincts. So if we're distracted by a little bit of fight or flight going on while we're thinking we're preparing for the potential of a crisis. Yeah. Okay. I mean, here I am stuck on a serial killer from the 16th, 17th century that I just literally can't wrap my brain around, and is trying to play Tetris with the details.
Yeah.
And then you're over here like, oh, and in current events. So it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
It does. Makes all the sense.
But I want to reach out, because if anybody has any theories, whatever they are,
or knows something we don't know about this,
right, or has a detail that I missed, or knows anything about this Elizabeth Bathory thing that could potentially feed my brain, please let me know.
We're reopening the case officially.
I'm officially reopening the case. I'm going to need to re-interview the witnesses. It's going to get weird. I mean, this is going to be on seances and Ouija boards and all kinds of stuff to try and reach out and touch base.
All right.
I need to know.
We all need to know.
I need to know. Perfect.
All right. Well.
All right. Please contact me. Let me know what happened. Elizabeth Bathory. That's the case we're trying to solve.
And if you're so anxiety ridden by what happened with Elizabeth Bathory, maybe go check out astrocoaching.com. And we'll help you through it.
That's true. Astrocoaching.com. We're here to help. If you still can't get rid of the angst, we have a health and wellness retreat coming up. It'll be in a blue zone in Costa Rica. The next retreat we have coming up will be in May, the beginning of May of 2025. So that'll be a 7-day health and wellness retreat. If you guys want to know about it, reach out, contact us anytime. Be happy to talk to you about it. Until then, live by choice,
not by chance.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. Let me know what you think of Elizabeth Bathory.